The Housing Act of 2026, Promise versus Reality. My fellow Americans, you are being told that help has arrived, that the Housing Act of 2026 is a solution to rising rent, unaffordable homes, and the growing pressure on everyday families. On paper, it promises relief. It promises fairness. It promises protection. But I ask you to look beyond the promises and examine the reality. Because while the language of the law speaks of helping the people, the structure of it leaves room, far too much room, for exploitation. We are living in a time where housing is no longer treated as a basic necessity. It has become an investment vehicle, controlled at scale by corporations that own not just a few properties, but entire neighborhoods, apartment complexes, and even the land beneath mobile homes. And when laws are written to regulate that power, corporations do not simply comply, they adapt. They say there are limits on how much can be owned, but those limits apply to individual entities, not the networks behind them. So what happens? One corporation becomes many. Dozens of LLCs, separate names, separate filings, but the same control. On paper, the law is followed. In reality, nothing changes. They say rent increases are controlled, but rent is only one piece of the cost. New fees appear, service fees, maintenance fees, administrative costs. The total price rises just under a different label. So while the law claims to protect tenants, the burden remains. They say mobile home communities are included. But here is the truth. Many residents own their homes, but not the land beneath them. Corporations buy that land, and once they do, they control everything. Lot rent goes up, rules tighten, and the people living there, they cannot simply leave. Moving a mobile home is expensive, sometimes impossible, so they stay, not because they want to, but because they have no other choice. And then there is the quiet force behind it all: technology. Pricing algorithms now track demand in real time. They don't compete, they align. Prices across entire regions begin to move together, rising to the highest level the market can tolerate. Not the fairest price, not the most reasonable price, the highest sustainable price. This is not a broken system. This is a system working exactly as designed. Because when profit is the only goal, the system will always push further, always extract more, until something stops it. And that brings us to the real issue. The Housing Act of 2026 is not just about housing. It is about power. It is about whether the systems we create are strong enough to protect the people, or weak enough to be shaped by those with the most resources. A law filled with loopholes does not limit power. It teaches power how to move. It tells corporations, here are the lines, now find your way around them. And they will. They always do. So the question we must ask ourselves is simple. Are we creating solutions, or are we creating the illusion of solutions? Because for millions of Americans, the reality has not changed. Rent is still rising. Homes are still out of reach. Families are still being squeezed between wages that stagnate and costs that climb. And when something as essential as housing becomes unaffordable, the consequences ripple through everything: health, stability, opportunity, and the future itself. Housing is not a luxury. It is not optional. It is the foundation of a stable life. And when that foundation is controlled by those whose only responsibility is to maximize profit, then the outcome is predictable. So what do? First, we pay attention, not just to what laws promise, but to how they function. Second, we demand accountability, not just from corporations, but from the systems that allow them to operate this way. And third, we recognize that this is not inevitable. Systems are built by people. They can be changed by people, but only if we are willing to see them clearly. Because in the end, the strength of any law is not measured by the words written on paper. It is measured by whether it protects the people it was meant to serve. And right now, that is the question we must all be willing to ask.